some friends that liked his first movie, but I'm super hesitant to even check it out because I can't imagine what that one's like. But basically, he plays this character, and he ends up getting mixed up into like some not so great situations, obviously, um, because like he needs some drama for his movie. But even then, like he's basically painted as like, well, if he's making a mistake, he's just a young man. Like he's just like making a little mistake. He's still like a nice, sweet guy, perfect. And I found it really gross. I guess I don't have a lot more to say about it than that, but I try not to like hate on like small indie movies. That it's like, wow, good job making your movie. Like you did, that's a really big deal. Wow.
Well, Reed's gonna die, so
No,
It's
here in Tennessee.
The vibes.
Well, Reed, yeah. I was gonna say like Reed, Apple TV is hearing Reed's dissent and is just like, we'll take care of you, buddy.
Yeah, but like I don't try to hate on many indie movies, but like I'm usually just like if I don't like it, I just kind of like let other people enjoy it. I'm like, whatever, like it's not changing that much. But this one's bad.
Yeah.
Like avoid or hate watch, in my opinion. And I don't understand how it has the acclaim it has. I don't understand how anyone can like watch it. Like I know it's probably too harsh of a thing to say. Can watch it and be like enjoying themselves. Unless you also just love Cooper Raiff. Seems like a really sweet guy.
I don't even know who he is, so that's an easy one for me.
Yeah, he's, in my opinion, super annoying.
I don't. What else have I seen him in?
I was looking while he was talking.
He looks familiar. Is he in a TV show?
Maybe. Let me see.
I'm looking at TV.
Looks like he did a couple.
I would have kissed you, Shithouse, Cha Cha, Real Smooth.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would avoid, in my opinion. I mean, I'm hopeful. Honestly, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, people should be really hard on him about this one because I don't want him to be like 40 and still like paying 25-year-old women to like tell him he's amazing. You know, like he needs to be knocked down a peg now, so that way he can actually make good movies at some point.
What? So he end up like Woody Allen?
Yeah, exactly. He strikes me like it seems like he wanted to make a bit of a Woody Allen movie.
Oh, they all do.
Except he's not like misanthropic enough. So yeah, that's Cha Cha Real Smooth. It's on Apple TV Plus. Not worth watching.
Would not.
Man.
Reed's saving all his praise for the second half. It's okay. It's all good.
Yeah.
It can only be one.
Yeah.
Well, real quickly, I want to talk about a movie that is now in the Criterion Collection, and I believe it's on, or I watched it on the Criterion Channel, and that's Mississippi Masala. It's directed by Mira Nair, who I think we're fans of here at the podcast. I think we've talked about like Monsoon Wedding. I'm trying to think of others that I've seen.
We haven't done a Mira Nair series.
No, she follows us on Twitter. Shout out to Mira. No, I've seen Monsoon Wedding, Queen of Catway, and then this one. But yeah, it's this one I really enjoyed. I haven't seen Monsoon Wedding in forever, so I wouldn't know how to compare it to that. But Mississippi Masala came out in 91. You start by you see this Indian family who is expelled from Uganda when a dictator takes power, and his whole deal is that he just wants like natural born Africans there in Uganda. And so a lot of the Indian population who are there because they came to construct a lot of the infrastructure there on the in their cities, and just kind of stuck around. There's like a mass exodus as they leave. And so the family, I guess, kind of moves around. They go to like England. You don't really see it. It kind of Indiana Jones it, where it's like England, Mississippi. But they end up, I think it's I forgot how many years. It's a number of years past, and they're in Mississippi. The dad is still obsessed with reclaiming his land and going back to Uganda. But the family runs a liquor store in Mississippi. The daughter, they all live in like a motel, and the daughter helps clean at the motel and do other things. But then she meets Denzel Washington, And so they start to they fall in love, start a relationship. But then there's an incident that happens midway through the movie where they've kind of not been like secretive, but she hasn't really disclosed the relationship to her family and things like that. And so something kind of comes to pass, and it kind of spirals a lot of their lives out of control. But this one's I really enjoyed it. It's Denzel Washington and Sharita Chowdhury, who's the female lead, and it's like a peak, like a sexy ass movie. Like this is like two like
Like
apex,
steamy.
like two apex hot people. Like it's not like what Reed was just describing. Like it's like two like apex hot fucking people who are like doing gaga, love eyes to each other the whole time, and then they have sex at one point. Yeah, and that's like, I mean, that's what should be the main takeaway for people, is it's just like super hot people just being in love for a lot of, and like that's like the whole vibe of the second act of this movie. And it's also just like, it's a very like the chemistry is really nice. It's just a very like naturally, like, I mean, you got Denzel Washington, so he's fucking charming. And she's able to like kind of play along with him in a really in a really great manner. Like they seem very like natural together. But I think it's a smart, I think it's a pretty smart movie. It kind of not only digs into like it kind of digs into the dichotomies of like colorism. So it's not like, it's not like like what you would expect, like a white and black or something like that film. It's kind of getting into the very nuanced intricacies of colorism, and kind of how that shapes people, because you have this Indian family that has, at least the father has this negative view of black people because of how he was treated getting kicked out of Uganda. And so he kind of has this prejudice against them. And then you have the African Americans in Mississippi who kind of have this prejudice against these Indian families, because it just kind of shows like, and it's mentioned many times, like, why are we fighting each other on this different, like, we're kind of all in the same boat, we're all below the power structure in place wherever we are. And so it's constantly kind of dealing with that, but not in a very, I like that it deals with it in kind of through the nature of like this relationship between these two people, rather than, it's not like it's not like college lecture. And I think it's just very thoughtfully done. I think that especially like the daughter and the father-daughter relationship between Mina, the main character, and her father, I think are just are really great. I really, and then and then I have to kind of just give a shout out to her mother, Sharmila Tagore, who was in the second Apu movie by Satyajit Ray, and then in a number of his movies. So I was kind of like, a little fan person moment. But yeah, check out Mississippi Masala if you want to just like watch two hot ass people fall in love, and like dance, and like walk around bayous and kiss, and just be like being hot people in love. This is the movie for you. Literally, like every Letterboxd review is just these people are incredibly hot. Like what? Like here's two for you: the hottest leads in any movie ever. And then people say bisexuality is being greedy, when I'm actual fact, it's just being stressed and confused about which extremely hot person you fancy more in films like this.
All of the above is the correct answer.
So that's the vibes here we got going on, and like
they're all cute. People are just cute. Not overthink it.
Well, they're not even cute. They're just two hot ass people. Like
There
they're just two hot people. You're just like, good for them. you know.
Well, you know, some like it hot.
Some do.
Are you trying to transition into the second part?
I was my. So I'd try my hand at a little podcast transition.
Yeah. Let me finish first. But Mississippi Masala, it's on like I said, Criterion Channel. And they just put out an edition as well. I think that probably is the only way you're going to be able to see it. But yeah, it is we got Criterion sale going on right now. Honestly, good blind buy if you're like looking to just kind of take a chance on something. I think this one's worth it. So,
Right.
but you know what else is hot?
Some like it hot.
All right.
That was not a what?
All right, we're going to talk about Some Like It Hot in part 2 after this.
All right. Bet you can't wait.
Shout out to sorry to our YouTube people. I forgot to switch on the YouTube until Reed started talking. So if you want to listen to me talk about Elvis, you got to hit up that podcast. I'm making it like, I'm adding some exclusivity to it now. Yeah, you got to hit up the podcast if you want to hear me talk about Elvis. That's podcast only content.
You know what?
And also
that's
I forgot.
rare.
Yeah, I just forgot. I got sucked into talking about Elvis, and then Reed was describing what sounded like a stupid movie, and I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't hit live."
He did not like it.
Don't watch it.
Well, I guess this part isn't on the podcast, so you could just recap everything that you just said about Elvis.
No, podcast only. Podcast only, guys.
Sorry, guys, I tried.
I will say that I think I was proud of my Letterboxd review for Elvis, which is Boz created a fan cam movie, and that's definitely what that is. In the best way. I'm not saying that as a slight.
Yeah, I didn't think so after your review.
It's a lot of it does feel like a fan cam movie. It would go into my collection of like TikTok movies.
Yeah.
It's a TikTok.
I've talked about TikTok on here before, but I would be interested in a list of TikTok movies.
Yeah, I need to sit down and write it out. I have a few though that I would classify as TikTok movies, just in how they're structured and edited. It feels very translating movie editing to TikTok crowd.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on over there?
Some YouTube exclusive.
Yes, that's why you really need to listen to the podcast, because you don't have to see this bullshit going on.
I thought I would give it as a treat.
No, we were saying, or at least I was saying, this is why you should listen to the podcast, because you don't have to listen to this bullshit.
And that's why I said, no, this is no bullshit. This is a treat. This is deliberate. I was giving you a rare glimpse into the sound of birds.
into our lives. Sometimes there's bird call it around the place.
I got these. See, there's my little birds. I got them in Costa Rica.
Go, Andrew. Dinner's ready. Are they different sounding?
A little bit. And then one more.
Oh, okay.
I have 3 birds. I couldn't get rid of them. But so this one has a bunch of holes. And it's really hard to play it. But there was a guy who was walking around this plaza in La Fortuna, and he was just whistling up a storm, he was playing full-blown songs, and I can't make it sound
and you're just going
good. I know, he was just going he was so good at it, but all it sounds like when I do it is just like a train whistle. I don't know how he was doing it, but it's cute. Isn't it cute?
Yeah, reminds me of Fruit Loops.
It does. This one's made of clay. The other 2 are made of wood.
All right.
That's all I got.
This episode brought to you by
Costa Rica.
The Costa Rican
Rica
bird music playing guy.
Yep.
He's now our sponsor.
Any other sponsors?
Why is Domino's Pizza sending me a notification at 8:50?
Ooh. Did you order pizza?
Here's the deal. Here's the deal.
Uh-huh.
Make the most of this week with this delicious combo for only $20.
I mean, hey, you know what? What I'm hearing is you get that combo, you're not going to eat all of it, and then you have leftovers for days.
Oh, like about at 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's Domino's time.
You never know, man.
Yeah.
For the hungry boys out there.
Yeah. All right. You want to talk about Some Like It Hot?
Some like it hot.
I'm going to do a little disclaimer that there is some archaic language included in this, but it's a stupid Catholic. No, not stupid Catholic. It's a Catholic priest, Monsignor.
What does he say?
Writing about it.
Yeah.
Oh.
You want to know?
Yeah, kind of.
It's coming up next.
Oh boy,
Coming up next.
Y'all.
Here we go.
All right.
That's too long. I'm not going to work
It's
that.
so long. I wish we could make it
It's a
like
little
5
long.
seconds.
Can I? Okay, No, you have to do 30 seconds.
What?
You can just loop it. So, like, what if I just put it and just looped? Be obnoxious. All right.
You're gonna just count us in then?
Yeah. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 412 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies with 1959's Some Like It Hot. Directed by Billy Wilder from a script by Wilder and IAL Dizzy Diamond, which is a badass name. The film stars Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Joey Brown. After witnessing a mafia murder, slick saxophone player Joe and his long-suffering buddy Jerry improvise a quick plan to escape from Chicago with their lives. Disguising themselves as women, they join an all-female jazz band and hop on a train bound for sunny Florida. While Joe pretends to be a millionaire to win the band's sexy singer Sugar, Jerry finds himself pursued by a real millionaire as things heat up and the mobsters close in. The plot for Some Like It Hot was taken from a 1951 German film, Fanfaren der Liebe, written by Robert Theorin and M. Logan. The story, to which writer-director Billy Wilder had purchased the rights, featured 2 Depression-era musicians who are driven by poverty to pretend to be gypsies, black men, and finally women in order to find work with various bands. In an article by co-writer IAL Diamond, he stated that he and Wilder spent a year developing the script. Wilder and Diamond decided to drop the first 2 plot devices from the Theorin-Logan film and focus on the men dressing as women and joining an all-girl band. Initially, the Wilder-Diamond script was set in contemporary times because they felt they needed a situation more powerful than poverty to compel the characters to dress as women. According to Diamond, he suggested that a period setting would make it easier for the audience to accept female impersonation, and Wilder then came up with the idea to set the story during the Jazz Age and will have their characters witness a gangland slaying as motivation for hiding out. The gangland slaying that figures prominently in the film was loosely based upon the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre that took place in Chicago on February 14, 1929. The hit was linked to mob boss Al Capone and took place against his longtime rival George Bugs Moran over control of Chicago's bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution rackets. Diamond stated that Wilder offered Jack Lemmon the role of Jerry. Lemmon gave him a verbal agreement to appear in the film despite being under contract to Columbia Pictures. Tony Curtis was signed first, but United Artists pressured Wilder to cast a bigger box office name than Lemmon for the second male lead. According to Diamond, at UA's recommendation, Wilder approached Frank Sinatra, but Sinatra failed to make an appointment with the director. A modern biography of Wilder states that the director also had approached Anthony Perkins to co-star with Sinatra. Danny Kaye was also considered for Lemmon's role. Mitzi Gaynor was considered for Sugar until Marilyn Monroe wrote to Wilder expressing the hope that they could work together again after their success with The 7-Year Itch. Wilder stated that he had hoped to cast Edward G. Robinson in a mobster role, but because of a long-standing disagreement between Robinson and supporting actor George Raft, Robinson refused. George Raft was in the movie. So Diamond said that Curtis came up with the idea of Shell Oil Jr. mimicking actor Cary Grant's speech pattern. Diamond's article and numerous modern interviews with Wilder described difficulties with Marilyn Monroe during filming, including 47 takes of the line, "Where's that bourbon?" that was eventually shot with the actress's back to the camera. Monroe lacked concentration and suffered from an addiction to pills. She was constantly late to set and could not memorize many of her lines, averaging 35 to 40 takes for a single line, according to Tony Curtis. The line "It's me, sugar" took 47 takes to get correct because Monroe kept getting the word order wrong, saying either "sugar it's me" or "it's sugar me." Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon made bets during the filming on how many takes she would need to get it right. 3 days were scheduled for shooting the scene with Shell Jr. and Sugar at the beach, as Monroe had many complicated lines, but the scene was finished in only 20 minutes. Wilder spoke in 1959 about making another film with Monroe, quote, "I have discussed this with my doctor and my psychiatrist. They told me I'm too old and too rich to go through this again." But he also admitted, quote, my Aunt Minnie would always be punctual and never hold up production. But who would want to pay to see my Aunt Minnie? He also stated that Monroe played her part wonderfully. According to information on file in the MPAA-PCA collection at the Ampus Library, the Reverend Monsignor Thomas F. Little of the National Catholic Legion of Decency found Some Like It Hot to contain, quote, screen material elements that are judged to be seriously offensive to Christian and traditional standards of morality and decency. The subject matter of transvestism naturally leads to complications in this film. That there seemed to us clear inference of homosexuality and lesbianism. The dialogue was not only double entendre but outright smut. The offense in costuming was obvious. MPAA head Jeffrey Sherlock responded in a letter dated March 18th, 1959, saying, quote, "So far there is simply no adverse reaction at all, nothing but praise for it as a hilariously funny film. I am not suggesting, of course, that there are not dangers connected with the story of this type, but girls dressed as men and occasionally men dressed as women for proper plot purposes has been standard theatrical fare as far back as You Like It and Twelfth Night. We, of course, are not defending the too exaggerated costumes worn by the leading lady." Kansas, the state of Kansas, delayed distribution for 2 months when the State Board of Review refused to approve the picture unless over 100 feet of footage, mostly of the love scene between Sugar and Shell Oil Jr., was cut. And the Memphis, Tennessee Board of Censors rejected the film, then agreed to pass it if it was restricted to adults only.
Oh my God.
Variety 1959 said, "Some Like It Hot is probably the funniest picture of recent memory. It's a wacky, clever, farcical comedy that starts off like a firecracker and keeps on throwing off lively sparks till the very end." And in 1959, the New York Times said, "Some Like It Hot does cool off considerably now and again, but Mr. Wilder and his carefree clowns keep it crackling and funny most of the time." On that note, let's talk a little bit about the film, and we're gonna put Reid on the spot since you're coming in as our expert.
Coming in hot. I don't know about expert. I've seen it a number of times, and the first time I saw it, I fell in love with it, but was kind of put off by different aspects of it, especially for a movie this old. With the frankly, I left wondering if it was problematic the way it portrays certain things. But after seeing it a few times, the keys for me to the movie are the comedy and then Marilyn Monroe. And the comedy only works, in my opinion, because of Monroe, Curtis, and Jack Lemmon. Mm-hmm. They're all, I think, just so perfect in their roles. And I think Monroe's so good here. I think she's incredible. Even with everything you said with how hard she was to work with, how much trouble she was going through. I think this movie comes alive. The first moment it most comes alive is when they're rehearsing on the train and she's playing ukulele. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty short scene. It's only 30 seconds. She drops the flask or whatever too. But I think that's when this movie really just the energy picks up, and from there I think it's nonstop funny, so entertaining. And then on this watch, it is a really thoughtful movie, especially in its comedy. I think a lot of the interactions, especially later, as you have Jack Lemmon's character falling in love with the millionaire yacht owner.
This is my only chance to marry a millionaire.
I know. That's a good line. Such a good line. And then you have, Tony Curtis doing the opposite thing to Sugar. He's pretty sleazy. But it's so funny, and the way they play off each other I think is amazing. And I actually didn't know it was based on else. I kind of want to watch the previous movie. Although that sounds very different. But I think what doesn't stick with me as much from this movie is all the mob stuff. Like I think it's a nice storyline to go with it, but really once they're in Florida and playing music, and speaking of the love scene, like the extended love scene on the ship, cutting with the dance scene
Mm-hmm.
with oh goodness with Jack Lemon's character and
Daphne.
good, yeah, Daphne and Osgood. Like that is one of my favorite stretches of any movie ever, because it's kind of what you're talking about with Mississippi Masala. Like it's one side it's like Tony Curtis is sleazy, but he's very attractive, and Marilyn Monroe's
Yes.
an icon. And it's like a really good scene between them two, and then it's cutting back. Like honestly, I think he does like whip pans, like fake ones.
He does, yeah.
To like the dance hall, and they're just doing this really exaggerated cha-cha, and like Osgood at one point is like, Daphne, you're leading again. And it's just
the best part of it is when they're switching the rows between each other.
Yes.
I like that one.
Yep, it's so good. And
It's so funny how it's gradually like she seems so pissed off at first to be there, like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this favor, but then eventually like they're both just so into it. I guess I shouldn't say she, like, but still as the character,
right.
It's very funny.
Yeah, and then later there's like a callback to when they're like the mobsters show up at the for their convention or whatever, and they're scared and packing, and then Daphne takes a second with the like mariachi, the like maracas, and is just like taking a second to go back to the dance and his mind. But it is so, I just think it's such a funny movie. It's pretty, and I think it transcends like the time difference too. Like I think audiences can watch it now and still love it.
Yeah.
Hear what y'all thought too.
I loved speaking about just Jack Lemmon's performance. I like how one, he's just so neurotic, and then they finally like get on the train and he immediately switches on to like one of the girls.
Yes.
Like it's like he's just so like he's just talking to all of them and he's like, I'm Daphne. What do you I love your nails. Like he just immediately switches over.
He does so good.
It's
a performance of a lifetime.
It cracks me up every time.
It's just funny, just the dynamic of the two. Like was it Jack Lemmon's character who's Daphne?
Yeah.
He's just so like chatty and goofy and like maybe like mildly annoying but endearing too. But then, I'm sorry, what was the other actor's name?
Tony Curtis.
He's so like he's just so cool. Like you know, he's like I'm like the cool guy, but now I have to be a girl, but I'm just gonna like mostly keep, I don't know, they're fun to play off of, the two of them, and just how like they complement each other. Also, I guess this movie felt a little different watching it now, just realizing, I don't know, I guess as kind of a young adult, like living on my own, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was the same situation last time I watched it, but I'm just kind of seeing like all the little circumstances they're getting themselves in and out of just because they're kind of scrappy. You know, they're just kind of living paycheck to paycheck and just like from one household to the next. And the like decisions they have to make that kind of get them in trouble, you know, like lending from people or like just taking whatever gig they can because they're just so desperate to like pay this bill and that bill. And it's, I don't know. So I guess I never really noticed that piece of it and just kind of how endearing it is in that way. I don't know, kind of in a relatable way, but it's a series of really goofy, unfortunate events, I guess. But then they fail up, like somehow, you know, that by the end, it all works out for them. And that's probably true. You kind of get this idea that this is the cycle of their characters. Like they're going to just be like constantly facing like calamity, and then like a really like randomly really good thing happens and randomly another terrible, like it's just, I don't know, going to keep escalating forever. I don't know. So I think they're just, it's just kind of adorable in that way, this like buddy movie.
Mm-hmm. Reid, you mentioned that like this is something that you feel like you could drop in front of somebody, you know, somebody today, and they would still find it entertaining, even people that younger than us. I mean, it's interesting, kind of looking at the movie, because on the surface, you would kind of like you said, you would assume that it would like have like people would find it problematic with how they're dressing up as women, things like that. I mean, I guess what for both of you, what about the movie kind of throws that out the window? Because I think I think that doesn't really hold much. I mean, I think it's very
Mm.
there's not anything too problematic about it, because it's never making fun of the fact that they're dressed up as women. It's just making fun of them.
I think it does play a little bit with, you know, the fact that they realize some of their like shitty behaviors as men towards women, what that actually feels like in the like female experience too. So I mean, I think that, I don't know. I guess it's not really for me as a cis person to, you know, I don't know if I understand like how the movie feels like it would be a hostile kind of interpretation, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't.
go ahead and read.
Oh, sorry. I don't. I don't know either as a cis person, but I think watching this time, I thought the conversation after the scene we were talking about, the love scene mixed with the dancing scene, the conversation they have in their room, uh,
Right.
really kind of hones in on it, as Jack Lemmon's character is frankly like he's now engaged to Osgood. Like
Right.
he seems genuinely confused about a lot of things, and but also it seems to, like, in my mind, slip between a lot of gender things, and it makes
Yeah.
kind of seem like gender doesn't really matter, and that's where it felt maybe
Mm.
a bit more progressive to me.
Yeah, it feels like just kind of a queer story. I don't know, like the way that they have to kind of play with gender and then experience it and experience attraction and love in a way that they weren't expecting to. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think if the movie had just been like, even at the start, you don't know what you're getting into, and you see just like the way Joe interacts with like the woman at the beginning that works for the music label guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like really rude to her and like is sleazy. And you're like, if we're just gonna watch like 2 hours of this, I'm not sure I want that. But like you're saying, Jess, like by about the middle, they're like having a lot flipped on them because they're
Mhm.
seeing like the way
Right.
are looking at them. They're also like experiencing a lot of this world as women, and it's just
Mhm.
I think that also is an interesting perspective for it. I mean, it never overtakes the comedy, which like I think is why it's not like blatantly like, oh, this movie is saying this about gender, because at the end of the day, I think it is a comedy first and foremost. Like it's not trying to
Right.
make grand statements. But yeah.
Well, you also have to look at who, like I said, like who is the joke being pointed at. You know, it's one thing, like never in the movie is it making fun of like the way they look or the fact that they're dressed up as women or anything like that. Again, the joke is always just on them, like
Right.
on the absurdity of them and what the missing information that they are lacking. And so that kind of shows that, yeah, it's not attacking the act of, you know, it's not attacking trans people or the act
Right.
of people who want to dress up as women, you know, for performance reasons or things like that. It's literally just kind of going like, no, we're just making fun of these two guys.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what they're doing.
Also, I don't know. I have this in my head. I make jokes a lot in movies when somebody's like in a really big situation. They're like, "Well, crap! Everybody's after me." Like John Wick, you know, everybody's after me. Like, what am I gonna do? And I like anytime I'm watching movies like that, I'm like, look, the choice, like the decision is obvious. You gotta sound like it hot. Like you need to dress up and try to like dress up as the other gender. Nobody would ever suspect, and then you'll make like. Imagine if John Wick had done that, right? Instead of like have to shoot up like an entire city of people who were after him or something.
Entirely different movie.
I mean, he could, yeah, exactly. But he could have done it. So I don't know. I think honestly, I mean, it's a genius. It's a genius idea. Now I feel like that could feel like invalidating or insulting, and that's not what I'm meaning to imply either. But hey, it worked. Okay, like they were able to get themselves a gig. So, and they had to get away from the mob. Like, can you blame the guys?
Yeah.
Speaking of the mob, I found them kind of funnier on this rewatch, just because you realize like how much it's hamming up like not
Yes.
necessarily mob movies in general, but like mob movies up to that point. So that's why, like, that's why he was wanting somebody
Right.
like Edward G. Robinson, who's known for crime movies and mob movies, to be in it, because he was more spoofing the mobsters. Like I sent Jesse a Snapchat of just like, can you imagine if you were Spats, who literally his whole personality is, I'm a mobster, I wear spats, and I drink buttermilk.
It's so funny the beginning of the movie because it feels like you're watching something completely different. Like you're in this police chase, like undercover operation thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, and we like turn the camera and it's actually about these two goofballs. So I liked in the first half, I like the juxtaposition of the tones between like the mobsters, but the goofballs that we spend time with. But I didn't love in like the very last act of the movie when the second group of mobsters show up in the hotel and they're like all standing around that table and they're about to do that birthday scene. I kind of thought that the mobster that they picked for the guy who was leading,
Little Bonaparte.
yeah, and he had the headphones on. I didn't understand what they were going for at all, and I kind of liked how serious, how like almost like overly serious they took it in the first half.
Yeah.
And so the second half, even though it does end up with like a shooting and a bunch of people die, it was like I just don't even take the scene seriously because I didn't like that performance so much.
Yeah, it's probably a reference to a mob character from like a 20s or 30s movie.
Yeah.
That they're, because I mean that's the whole that's the whole thing that they're making fun of in that whole section, is just, or at least with that subplot, is they're just kind of making fun of like I mean, you have literally the one guy who's actually Edward G. Robinson's son, who's not even like flipping the coin, he's just like throwing the coin up to himself, and it's which is just, you know, like it all, that's also a reference. And so it's just like it's constantly just kind of making fun of like, if anything, it's making fun of how absurd the mobsters are. Over like, it's not making fun of any absurdity with the men dressing up as women. It's making fun of how absurd these mobsters are, and how silly they look, just in terms of their tough guy personas.
Yeah, I mean, there's the toothpick guy at the beginning who, like, you know who he is because he just has a toothpick in his mouth, and like after he shoots him, he goes and like knocks the toothpick out of his mouth. It's very, you can just totally see a movie prior to this doing stuff over the top and way too serious like that. Yeah, I like you said, Jess. Like I like how it feels like you're in one movie and then you suddenly can, and you're just like on these side characters from that movie for the rest of the time. And I just think that's so fun, and it's so entertaining.
These poor babies like have no idea what they accidentally like got themselves involved in. It's so silly.
Well, it's such a funny introduction too, because I like that when they see the police badge, and well, Jack Lemmon sees it first, and and Tony Curtis goes, oh, and they just start packing up, like they don't even like hesitate. They just go.
Yeah, they know. They know what they know. Like they always knew this was a risk when they like picked this gig, you know.
Something I picked up on this time, Tony Curtis is so like physically smooth. I never thought of him as such like a physical actor, but like in that scene, he also right after like slides down the fire escape ladder like really smoothly. Jack Lemmon like jumps off it basically, and he also like cat climbs up after his date with Sugar. Like he cat climbs up to see the hotel room, and I just thought that was like such a funny moment because he just walks up to the front door and then he just immediately starts climbing the awning by the front door.
Well, and it's such an interesting performance in this, especially if you've seen like Sweet Smell of Success, like where he's slimy, but just like super slimy. And never, there's not like a redeeming quality to it. At least he's kind of slimy in this one, and he somewhat redeems himself to a degree.
Yeah.
You at least kind of like him at the end. Like when he's Sidney Falco, you're just like, this guy, like he's just the worst until by the end of the movie. Yeah. It's kind of tough, other than like naming sequences about like what makes this movie funny. But we talked about him a little bit, but I do think that like, you know, Jack Lemmon helps really kind of lighten a lot of this movie up at the beginning. But I did want to talk a little bit about Marilyn Monroe's performance. You know, we mentioned it's pretty well documented, all the kind of issues behind the scenes going on there with this movie. But I mean, what do you all make about her performance? Not only just as like an actor in this, but also just kind of being kind of, you know, really that third lead between you kind of have Tony Curtis and
Mhm.
Jack Lemmon who are working on this wavelength that she has to kind of get to, and I feel like a lot of the time she does, even though she's maybe not like as comedically savvy as they are in terms of like turning that stuff around. She kind of does her own thing and it's effective.
Yeah. I like that she's just, I don't know. I mean, to me, she just she's so adorable. Like she comes off like kind of just a relatable, clumsy, like lovable, beautiful woman who just feels very messy and human, and silly and a little dumb, but like I think all of these things are just kind of very endearing and lovely about her. And I feel like when you watch her on screen, her presence is just so commanding. Like I kept noticing myself, like anytime she was on screen and talking, I just like I couldn't look away. Just the way that she just looks just so sweet and genuine as she talks. So I mean, it kind of, I don't know. I wonder what my perspective is had I known about the difficulties they had that she was having personally too, how that would color on a rewatch, how I interpreted all that. But I don't know. She's just mesmerizing, I think. And I can just see why, like Billy Wilder said, it was I don't know if I would do it again, but at the end of the day, like she there's something wonderful about her. And even though it was difficult to deal with, it was completely worth it because she's something. She's stunning. She's wonderful. I also think it's just, I mean, even if you just want to think about her as a sex icon for a second, like how difficult that must have been for her and kind of like how brave she kind of had to be, especially in that time. Even now, I think women in Hollywood, especially like really attractive women, have a really hard time. And I just can't imagine, as she was making movies, how that must have been. But I think she's just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's like magnetic, like
Yeah.
you're drawn to watching her. And I think it's kind of funny because with all the line reading she had to do, clearly I don't think you'd ever pull like a clip from this and show like this is great acting, but she like overcomes all of it. Like I actually like, I think her performance in this is actually one of my favorites because I think she makes it, but she's doing things you kind of never see actors do because she seems so authentic even through like the messy lines and stuff like that. She seems very real. And she's just like, she like all the musical scenes, I think she's fantastic in. And there's just something about her that you just have to watch, like above Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, who are great. Like she draws you into this movie more so even, and she's hilarious in Wilder's other movie with her, Seven Pitch. Like she's so funny, and I do think it's like that little bit of playing dumb. Like I think she knows it and is like
it's a performance.
Yeah, and it's so, she's so good at making it comedic and making it funny, and I'm sure that was hard on her as well. Like I'm sure doing like making her persona funny like that and not maybe the smartest person in the room, in terms of like when she's on screen, would be really tough on her, like in her own head. But in terms of her on-screen performances, it makes them wonderful. Like it makes it very believable and hilarious most of the time.
It kind of reminds me, it honestly kind of reminds me of Anna Faris in Smiley Face, although Anna Faris like comes off as much less like just mesmerizing, attractive, and just more hammy and silly. But some of the times that that she would just kind of be like, wow, I don't know, kind of reminded me just like the way that she would respond a little slowly or just very like hypnotically, and her like naivety in the performance that, like, I just can't help those. Was a bassist? She's like, or
the saxophone.
The saxophone. She's like, just can't help it. I don't know. It's like so like airy almost or breezy the way she talks. Kind of reminds me of Anna Faris and Smiley Face, a little bit. And I'm wondering.
Well, yeah,
it's inspiration.
Well, it's not. It's less like, to your point that it's not like she's like going to be bringing in awards for the acting performance, but like her performance is very much like a personality. Like she's very she plays off, she's like, yeah, I'm a little dumb, I make dumb choices, but I'm just trying to do this thing.
She's just a girl.
she's very charming just because she's kind of like,
Yes.
yeah, like I know that. I mean, like, you're not pulling one on me by telling me that. Just, that's just who I am. Just having a fun time. Like, calm down.
Well, your introduction to her is when she's drinking the whiskey, and she's like, "I could stop drinking if I wanted to."
See, I would want to be friends with her immediately. Like she's just, I love the genuineness of it. Like, I think most people are like, "Hello, my name is Susan." Like just that's it. But she's just like, "Hey, here I am," and like that's the kind of person I would want to be friends with. She's just.
Well, you have you have the introduction with her, and then initially like Jack Lemmon's just fawning over her, and that whole thing is just entertaining. Just the sequence of her coming in the bed and him kind of insinuating, like, he's like, "Oh, I got a surprise for you," and then the people just keep coming in with it, and he's just like, like, it's just great because you have the overzealous Jack Lemmon with the overzealous Marilyn Monroe. It's just it's very fun between the two of them.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's kind of it's a perfect compliment performance because you kind of have the other two having to chew up screen time, and then she kind of comes in and can just float through a scene and kind of do what it, I'm sure it was frustrating that she wasn't hitting her lines or doing that kind of stuff, but also like she kind of has this breathlessness, this kind of floating element where she's kind of floats through the scene, does whatever she wants. It seems a little off what you would have scripted for it. And there's something kind of natural and nice about that. Anything else about Some Like It Hot before we wrap it up? I mean, I second what we talked about before, but I think it's a movie that if you're a modern movie watcher who's kind of like wanting to watch some classics and get a sense of classic movies, I think this is a super easy one to go ahead and put on that list of like, it's a classic movie that even that people who watch classic movies love it. That I think you'll laugh and find very entertaining the entire time. It won't be like, you're not watching Bicycle Thieves, y'all. So but I don't know, do you all have any final thoughts on Some Like It Hot?
No, not really. It's a hard movie to talk about, I feel like, because like you said, like we can just talk scene after scene, like in terms of comedy and lots of funny things. And there are some interesting themes, but it's not necessarily like a heady movie. But I think that's part of what makes it so great too. Like, it's just so enjoyable.
Yeah, it's kind of compared to Billy Wilder's other stuff, it's difficult because you look at like Ace in the Hole and Double Indemnity and like Sunset Boulevard, there's like kind of showy performances and like the scripts there and all that. And this one, it's not like the script is bad. It's just it's just kind of bouncing around. It's just very like lighthearted and fun, and so it's not like you can really like there's not like a deep character, like it's not like Gloria Swanson and Sunset Boulevard. There's not like a deep character study you're going to do on this one. It's just like, no, it's just a fun time.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary, where from $1 to $5, you're welcome to support the show. Thank you to our supporters. Cam, Chad Newsom, Corey Willingham, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsathi, Titus Arthur, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1958's Elevator to the Gallows, which it's exciting. It's been on the Young Critics list, I think, for a couple of years now. So finally getting around to it. But until then, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Stay cool.